Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and this is my review of the last episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Picard. And let's just get right into it because I have pages and pages and pages of notes of every single thing wrong with it. So remember how in the previous episode our team of heroes were hiding in the house from the zombified, Borgified, super best of the best soldiers which Soong and the Borg Queen sent at them, and they disabled Nat Laris's transporter because Rios got injured and had to be sent away, and so that he won't be able to come back into the fight, they disabled the transporter for a while until he hacked it, and then they were just hiding in the house and running away from those soldiers for the whole episode. Instead of just using the transporter to get away, to escape, or to use it in the battle itself to win, no, they had to disable the transporter, and now they reactivate the transporter and beam back to Nat Laris's apartment, which also turns out to have a bunch of tricorders and a bunch of futuristic technology which they forgot to use in the previous episodes. And of course Nat Laris also forgot that she has the ability to possess other people and control other people like puppets, which only did once when she first met Picard, and ever since then never used it in any other opportunity. So why didn't she try to control Soong with it when he was sending those soldiers at them just one episode ago? And in this new episode, when she has to get into mission control and all of that, she forgot she has it, and somehow Soong made all the way back from France to the United States without a transporter, because remember, the new Borg Queen stole their ship, or rather Seven gave it to her, because for some reason they believed her when she told them she's now good. You know, for the whole season, the Borg Queen was trying to possess Jurati because Jurati was fighting it, I guess. Jurati was so strong she was able to resist it for the whole season, and they know all of that. They also know that she killed people, like that guy in the bar that wanted to have sex with her, he couldn't satisfy her, and she killed him in the street, and they all know all of that and didn't care apparently, because just a few episodes later they simply let her go because she tells them that she's now good. She tells them that she will be a good Borg from now on, and they believe her and let her have the ship and go out into space, and for some reason she flies into the Delta Quadrant. I would have been more fine with that if she said that she's taking it to the Beta Quadrant or to some distant sector of space which was never explored, because that way at least it will make sense in the continuity. If it's supposed to be restored timeline in the end, how would that make sense if she was in the Delta Quadrant? So that was also stupid. Also, how could she get to the Delta Quadrant so quickly? Did she spend all those 400 years just flying there? And that's why I didn't interfere with the timeline. I don't know, the writers don't know, they don't care, no one cares. So they just let her have the ship, and then they use Nat Laris's transporter to get back to LA. I guess that's fine, but Soong somehow also manages to get to LA instantly. Even though he was stuck in France, it would take at least a few hours for him to get there, right? Maybe he had a private supersonic jet in France, I guess that's how he did it. And now the final act is to make sure that Renee Picard gets on that spaceship to fly to Europa, because she needs to find some microorganism that will heal the oceans or something. And didn't they previously say that it's an intelligent microorganism, but now they forgot all about it, so it's just some microorganism which is somehow cure the oceans and the air and the pollution on Earth, which also contradicts their own continuity, because in Star Trek Discovery I remember that Stamets talked about the environment issue when he said that in the 21st century Earth nearly choked to death on pollution, but then we all woke up and started using clean energy and all of that. That's what they said in Star Trek Discovery. And yet now we find out it was all thanks to some microorganism which somehow cleaned the earth from the pollution. So it wasn't because humans woke up and started recycling and all of that. No, it's because of some microorganism that only Renee could find. If someone else goes on that mission and not her, then they will not find that organism. And I guess in all those centuries since, no one else ever found it, because, you know, the Confederacy was still using, I guess, Soong's force fields to keep the pollution away from the surface or something. They never bothered to explain anything, by the way. I'm making up excuses for them with all of this stuff. They never actually explained any of this in the show. They just made some vague remarks about it and not explained anything. So previously they said that if Renee fails the mission, then Soong somehow will lead to the Confederacy future, in which we saw force fields covering the Earth, and the Q said something about the Earth being kept on life support. So you're telling me that for centuries, after all of this, no one still found that organism on Europa, even though they became a galactic empire which took over the whole galaxy, and yet they couldn't find an organism in their own solar system. So Soong still wants to stop Renee because he wants to be the leader of Earth and all of that, and stopping Renee will somehow ensure the mission fails and they don't find an organism. And the Borg Queen also made a prophecy, because Borg Queens are now able to see all possible timelines, which begs the question, how come the Borg didn't win if they're able to do that? It could have been clever if they actually said that this new queen that we saw in this season, maybe she's an assimilated El-Orion, and that's why she has that ability, because they can see alternate timelines and all of that, and they could have explained that somehow, but no, apparently the Borg Queen is simply able to see all possible timelines. And even though she's now their friend, and she could have stuck around for one more day to help them save the Earth and all of that, especially since it's in her own interest to ensure the Confederacy doesn't exist, because it will destroy all the Borg, as we've seen in the first 2 episodes. But I guess she cannot wait to get to the Delta Quadrant, so she just couldn't wait one more day to help them out, and instead she made a vague prophecy to them, saying there needs to be 2 Renees, one who lives and one who dies, and just went off into space. And so now they're trying to figure out what that vague prophecy means. And Nat Lyris is going to beam herself into mission control to save Renee, and then Picard kind of grabs her while she's in mid-transport, which I guess is a callback to the voyage home, in which that scientist lady jumped on Kirk when he was beaming away to come with him. And this whole season, by the way, was full of all kinds of references and similarities to other Star Trek movies and all of that. I will make comparison videos with all of that in the coming weeks to come. I have so much material for my other channel. So anyway, Picard grabs her to transport with her, and then he tries to convince her not to sacrifice herself to save Renee, even though he knows that saving Renee means saving the galaxy and all of that. But he says, no, you don't have to sacrifice yourself. Don't kill yourself. And then she says, you don't tell me what to do, man, and all of that. She starts berating him, and this reminds me of, the previous season when everyone used to verbally abuse Picard all the goddamn time, and now she's doing that, and she tells him, it's my life. I will decide what to do. I don't need your protection. I'm a strong woman, all of that. So that was cringy as well. And then he just agrees, he just looks down as always and just agrees, and so he doesn't have a commanding presence. That's one of the biggest problems with his character in this whole show, that he doesn't feel like the same character from TNG. When he used to be a captain, he was actually commanding people, he was a leader, but in this show he's just being led around and doesn't do anything, he doesn't have any ideas, he doesn't command anyone, he doesn't have any kind of commanding presence at all. He's just a nice old man who's just giving advice to people and all of that. So he doesn't even feel like the same character in any way. So anyway, he's once again been berated by a woman, and then she goes to meet Renee, and she dresses up as some other astronaut, and then comes to Renee and tells her that that other one was sick, and that's why she's replacing her. And then Renee realizes that she's lying, and I keep thinking, wait, what exactly was her plan? Like, if she succeeded in her deception of Renee, and Renee would have believed her, and then later on the mission itself, she would have seen that that other lady is not with her on the mission, that Maya was indeed on the mission, then wouldn't she call security? Wouldn't it cause maybe cancelling the mission or delaying it? Maybe that will sabotage the mission. So what was going to happen next if Renee actually believed that? And then Renee doesn't believe that, and then she tells her the truth, that she was watching her entire life and all of that. Then Renee is seen running out of the corridor, and the corridor is absolutely empty, and that's an important point. And then Soong arrives in this facility, and he's given a VIP access because he donated a bunch of money to NASA, even though in the early parts of the season they said that he's broke, that he doesn't have any funding anymore, and also he's a disgraced scientist. That was in all the papers which his daughter saw on the internet, and yet NASA treats him like a VIP guest, and he demands special treatment. He says, oh, I donated so much money, I demand FaceTime with the astronauts, and the astronauts are supposed to be in quarantine. And yet, apparently, just before the launch, they break quarantine. Suddenly, they can meet people. Suddenly, they're out in the open. So what was the point of the quarantine in the first place if they break it on the day before the launch? So anyway, Soong is given access to roam freely in this facility. And then they're in an empty corridor. And Soong walks in an empty corridor. And then Nat Lyris, who is disguised as Renee, comes at him in the empty corridor. And he thinks that's Renee, and I guess the audience was supposed to think that, even though it was obvious it's not Renee, because they've said earlier that she's going to sacrifice herself, so it was so obvious that it's not even a surprise. And Nat Renee somehow recognizes Soong. even though earlier we didn't have any indication that she even knew who that is, and yet she runs to him as if she knows him, as if he's a close friend, and she says, oh, some crazy woman says she's from space and is here to protect me, please help me. And then he kind of touches her face, and then he reveals that his hand was covered with a neurotoxin, which is going to kill her pretty fast. And the funniest part in all of this is, why didn't she just shoot him in the corridor and then just beam him out of there? She has a transporter, she has all those devices which can control people's minds. Why didn't she possess his mind and control him like a puppet and then just beam out of there, or stun him, or use that supersonic tricorder stunning which they used previously, or a million other things which she could have used in an empty corridor. No one would have known about any of this. She just stun him and beam him out of there, and then you save the mission. But no, she had to make him think that Renee died, and so she came up to him so that he can touch her with his hand, and then he reveals that his hand was covered with a neural toxin, and he's being all sadistic about it. He says, oh, my neurotoxin, it's fast, it's deadly, it's going to kill you, and then walks away thinking that Renee is dead. And then Picard finds her, and then she removes her mask and reveals that she's actually not Laris. And then she gets blood all in her eyes, and the blood is red. But she's supposed to be a Romulan, right? And Romulans have green blood, so why are her eyes have red blood? Maybe she got modified by that species who sent her to Earth, maybe so that if she ever gets injured, no one will know she's an alien. Maybe that's why they modified her blood to be red and not green. I guess it's possible. Again, I'm making up excuses instead of the writers. But why didn't they change her ear to permanently look like a human ear if she's going to live on Earth for decades, apparently? So why wasn't she changed to look like a human instead of having to use the devices all the time to hide her ear? And now she used the device to pretend to be Renee to make Soong believe that he killed her so that he will just go, instead of just beaming him away or stunning him or capturing him or a million other things she could have done. She had to sacrifice herself because that's heroic. And isn't she supposed to become Laris's ancestor? So how is that possible if she's now dead? Did she have children already? They never mentioned that. So how exactly will any of this make any sense? I don't know. And meanwhile, Rios and Seven and Raffi go to Soong's house to fight his plan B. And his plan B is to send some flying drones to destroy the missile itself, to sabotage the launch. And they go into his house and they see the drones before they are launched, and they can't figure out how to stop them. You know, if only you had some kind of energy weapon or something that you could vaporize things with, that would have been so useful. Remember a few episodes ago when they used phasers to just break into police cars and steal them to take them on joyrides and on chases on the streets for absolutely no reason? And yet now when they actually need it, they didn't bring any phasers apparently, so they cannot stop the drones from being launched. And I keep thinking, just use a phaser. But then Raffi says, oh, if we do anything to it, it will blow everything up. And then I think, okay, and that's a problem. Why don't you have transporters? Why can't you leave a phaser on self-destruct or on auto to shoot a beam a minute from now and then beam out or something? So what's the problem here? There is no problem, and yet they behave as if they don't have any phasers anymore. I guess they forgot to bring any, and then they have to hack into the system, and they spend a few minutes trying to hack into these drones and all of that, and it doesn't work, and the drones get launched. Then Rios manages to get control of one of the drones, and then he's like playing a video game trying to catch the other drones with his one drone, and we barely see any special effect. It's all on the view screen, looking like a video game in which he tries to catch the other drones before they get to the space shuttle. And meanwhile, Nat Laris is dying in Picard's hands, but at least she got to see the launch of Renee, which she waited her whole life to see it happen, so she dies happy in his hands. And then he kisses her on the head, which is covered with the neurotoxin which Soong used, which somehow didn't affect Soong himself. I guess he gave himself an antidote. I guess that's possible, so I don't want to complain about things which are easily explainable. So obviously he's the one who designed the neurotoxin, so maybe he made himself immune, but Picard is not immune and he kisses her. I guess he's a robot, so it wouldn't work on him. I don't know, the writers don't care. Why should I care about any of these details? And she has red blood in her eyes and she dies. But Renee flies off into space. And by the way, there are some similarities to the movie Contact, because she brings along some necklace that Nat Laris gave her once. And also when they talked previously, they said something about she wanting to go out into space because she's hoping to meet her mother there who died when she was young or something. So that reminded me of Contact. There was also a special effect image earlier in the episode before the launch when the camera was zooming across the solar system near Jupiter and other planets as we hear some radio waves, and that really reminded me of the opening scene in Contact. And it always annoys me when they show the solar system that it looks as if all the planets are really close by. You can see some of them in the same shot sometimes. And then we never actually see Renee's mission. That was something that I was hoping maybe they will show some glimpse of. That is something interesting. Some going to some other planet for a change. On a show called Star Trek, actually showing us someone going to some other planet might be interesting, but we never actually go to see that. We only see it on TV when Renee is reporting from her mission. And Soong is in his house again, and he's angry that his mission failed, and he's breaking stuff and all of that. And suddenly he looks at his computer, and he sees all his files are being deleted by someone from afar. Someone hacked his computers, and everything is being deleted, and he's so angry. And I laughed so much at this scene, because I kept thinking, this is all your life's project, you spend your whole life on it, and you never bother to have a backup and a physical copy or something. I make videos for fun. I have a hobby of making videos. I always have backups of everything. I always have all my videos which I worked so hard on stored up. And yet imagine if you spend your whole life making genetic experiments and whatever, and you're working in secret, and yet you keep all of that stuff on one computer without any backups. So what an idiot. So anyway, his life's work gets wiped out by a hacker, and then it turns out to be his daughter who's doing it from a public library, and she's using some VR visor to do it, because that's the best way to hack. You don't actually have to use a computer and a keyboard. You can just use a VR thing on your head from a public library, I guess because she needed the Wi-Fi for it. And we didn't actually see her take that visor. When she left the house previously, she had it in the house, but she didn't take it with her, and yet now magically she has it. I guess maybe it's everywhere in the distant future of 2024. People now use VR visors to use computers, I guess, and she's doing the thing with the hands just like in the previous season. Something I made fun of previously when she constantly had to use those holograms to do things, and now apparently she's doing the same, only we don't see it, and that way they can save the budget of the special effects. They don't actually have to show us the holograms. We can imagine that only she sees them with that VR stuff. And all of this reminds me of those old movies from the 80s and 90s when they thought the future is going to be all virtual reality, VR stuff, and that's how people are going to be using computers in the future and all of that, which didn't turn out to work so well. And yet in this show, that's how it works. Apparently she loves using that VR stuff on her head to hack into his computer, and she says, I'm doing it for my sisters. And I keep thinking, wait, what exactly do you mean? He didn't actually kill them, he actually made them. If not for him, they would not even exist. And he never intended for them to die, they simply died of some genetic defects. It's not like he intended them to die. And also, you're erasing the records that they ever existed. So you're actually making sure that Soong never gets caught, because, why didn't you just call the police so that they will come to his house and then they will find all the evidence of all the illegal stuff he did? But instead, you're erasing it for him. You're removing all the evidence of all the bad stuff he did, and erasing the record that your sisters ever existed. And then you're saying that you do it for your sisters. That doesn't make any sense either. And then Soong is really angry that all his work got deleted, all his genetic experiments deleted, but then he remembers, oh wait, I have something in my drawer which was not on the computer, which is a physical copy, and it says Project Khan. And you know how I previously complained that they never tried to tie it with the eugenics wars and all of that? Now I think maybe they should not have, because when they try to tie things together, they just cause even more problems. It's better off if they never try to tie anything up to the old continuity, because now they've messed things up even more. So what exactly does this even mean? What is Project Khan? So are there multiple Khans now? Because the date on the notebook actually says 1994, which was the date in which Khan was supposedly ruling all of Earth before he was removed in the eugenics wars and all of that and escaped into space. So what does this notebook mean? Did he help create Khan previously? Is he going to create another Khan? Is he going to clone Khan? Are there going to be multiple Khans? Is any of this even going to be explained later? And if not, then what's the point of this? They seem to be setting something up, but it's the end of this plot line in the past, so it's never going to be answered. So what was the point of any of this, except for a member berry? Maybe this will be explained in the new show, Strange New Worlds, in which we have some descendant of Khan or something, so maybe they will explain it later down the line. maybe Soong cloned Khan again or something, so I don't even know, I don't even care at this point. And then Corey is getting hacked herself. Now someone else is hacking her and telling her to meet them at some address, and she thinks it's going to be Q, and then she waits for Q to arrive, and then someone walks behind her, and then she says, Q, it better not be one of your games, Q. And I'm thinking, wait, why are you so annoyed at Q? First of all, you don't really know him. All you know of him is some recording he sent you through that VR previously, and he's actually the one who gave you the cure, who allowed you to go free, who cured you of your genetic disease that you were not able to go out into the sun. Q is the one who freed you, so shouldn't you be grateful to him? Why are you annoyed by the idea that Q wants to meet you again? Shouldn't you be grateful? Shouldn't you be thanking him? And what do you mean, isn't it one of your games again? How do you know that he plays games with people? You don't know him. All you know is that he gave you a cure that freed you, that is, he is the reason for your freedom. So why are you so annoyed by him? But at least you came to that address. But then it turns out it's not Q, it's Wesley Crusher, who showed up to meet her. And that was the part in which I literally thought I was hallucinating. I had to stop everything and to make sure I'm awake, that I'm not actually dreaming this up, because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought I might have accidentally switched to the Ready Room show, or the behind the scenes stuff, or the deleted stuff. I don't know. I was sure I'm not watching the correct episode, because something was so off, and I thought I'm going crazy for that moment. And especially because of the way he looks like just someone from the street. Imagine what people who don't know the full background even think about this scene. It will make no sense. Like just some random guy from the street just came to her and started talking with her about all kinds of space-time mambo-jumbo. Like someone who doesn't know the old Star Trek shows or doesn't know the background of who that guy even is will be even more confused than me, because it looks like some guy from the street just tries to hit on Corey by telling her some crazy joke or something. So nothing in this scene makes any sense, and it all feels so cheap and lazy. Will Wheaton's acting is so bad in this scene, and he was being so overexcited just by being allowed to be on the show, and he didn't even bother to shave or to try to look more like Wesley Crusher that we knew from TNG. So it all felt so lazy, and the most ridiculous part is that he's telling her all the crazy stuff about travelers and protecting the space-time continuum and all of that, and she accepts all of that and believes all of that right away. And, you know, from her perspective, she doesn't know anything about aliens existing or time travel. All she knows in relation to science fiction being real is that she's a genetic experiment. That's all she knows. That's something realistic, you know. But now someone dumps all this exposition on her that there are aliens and travelers and time travelers and protecting the universe and all of that. You know, she didn't even know that Q was an alien. She didn't even know that he has any special powers. All she knows is some guy gave her a genetic cure for her genetic illness. But suddenly some guy from the street approaches her and starts telling her all this BS, and she believes it right away. And you know, it would have made sense if he first beamed her somewhere to some spaceship or to some futuristic setting with some sci-fi costumes and sets. Then I would believe that she believes it, but no, it's all taking place on a street corner. All this conversation is on the street. And by the way, the transition shot that they showed us right before the scene is the same shot we saw early in the season when they first arrived in LA. That was exactly the same shot. So they're even recycling their aerial footage of LA. It's the same shots again and again. So anyway, this guy just walks up to her on the streets, tells her this crazy story, and she believes him right away. And so why did he even need to send her a message so that she will come to this street corner? How come he couldn't just approach her when she was out on the street? Why they need to send her a message so that she will come there? If he has control of all of space-time, as he says, why did he had to have her come to him? So anyway, let me get to his actual dialogue. So he tells her that he used to be known as Wesley Crusher, but now he's a traveler of all time and space, and his group of travelers are protecting all of space-time and the entire universe because it's so fragile or something. And he also says that they are the ones who send the Watchers, which means he and his partners were the bosses of Nat Laris and Gary Seven and all of those guys, but none of this makes any sense, and I already made a video on that on my other channel, just showing all the clips back to back, showing why it doesn't make sense. First of all, the Traveler in TNG specifically said that they never visited Earth, they never encountered humanity before, that they didn't find them interesting, and yet we're supposed to believe these are the guys who sent Gary 7, who was on Earth in the 20th century, when the Traveler said that they didn't visit humanity before, they didn't find them interesting before, and also the traveler specifically said that he travels out of curiosity and to meet other potential travelers like him out in distant space. He never said anything about protecting society or anything like that. And even more specifically, when Wesley pulled himself out of time in his last appearance in TNG on that planet with the Indians, the traveler specifically told him not to intervene in their affairs. He said, have faith in their ability to solve their problems on their own, and then they just walk out of that scene, never trying to save anyone. So it's not the traveler's job to try to save anyone in the galaxy or the universe. That's not what they do. And yet now Wesley says that the traveler's job is to protect society or something, so it doesn't fit. And also the traveler specifically said that he cannot enter people's minds and people's thoughts. He said that in the TNG episode Remember Me. And yet now they're telling us that the travelers actually send the Watchers, and we saw that Nat Laris, the Watcher, has the technology to go into people's minds. We saw that when she enters Picard's mind to read his thoughts and his subconscious and all of that, and yet the traveler didn't have that ability. The traveler said that he cannot enter people's minds, and yet the people he sends and the people like him send apparently do have that ability, which they give them. The technology that Nat Laris has is from her bosses, who are apparently the travelers. Apparently there's a whole group of travelers, because in the end he says to Corey, welcome to the travelers. All of this scene is to recruit her to the travelers, even though he doesn't even know her, he doesn't know anything about her, except that she's a failed genetic experiment which was let loose by Q. And I guess maybe she doesn't belong in this timeline or whatever. That's why he has to remove her from the timeline, because she doesn't fit, and so he's going to recruit her to the travelers, which are a group which is protecting society, which is what the traveler said they should not be doing back in TNG. And the traveler said they never visited humanity before until that episode in the 24th century, and yet Gary 7 was on Earth in the 20th century, and Nat Laris was on Earth in this century, and they're assigned to protect society or destiny or the timeline. So Wesley is like the time cop now that, I was previously suggesting, why not have that guy who played Duquesne, who was serving on a Federation time ship which was protecting the timeline in Voyager, and it's the same actor, so I was saying why not make him the same character, and then it turns out it was just some random guy who saw some Vulcans in the past or something, and then he just goes away out of the show. And yet now Wesley shows up out of nowhere and reveals that he's actually the one watching over the timeline, and yet he never bothered to do anything across this whole season. If he was there the whole time watching all of this, why didn't he help out anything? Why didn't he save anyone? A bunch of people died in this season. What about that guy in the bar who Jurati murdered out in the street? How come he never saved him? I guess he was destined to die. I guess he deserved it. He tried to have sex with a random woman he met in a bar, so maybe he deserves to die according to Wesley's judgment. So that guy from the bar deserved to die, or was supposed to die according to his judgment, so he never bothered to save him. He only shows up in the very end to take Nat Soji away on some mission or something, and that's it. So what was even the point of any of this? It doesn't tie to anything, it doesn't make any sense, it is full of continuity errors with the other shows. How come he never visited Picard, his mentor, who was like a father figure to him, and he was in the same season with him in the same time period, and he never bothered to show up to say hi to Picard himself? So nothing about this makes any sense, and especially the execution of all of it. The acting was so bad, the lack of costumes, the lack of any futuristic settings or effects, and also in the very end of that scene he just beams away in a regular looking transporter effect. So if he's the one who sent the Watcher, why is he not using the same kind of transporters like the Watcher? Where exactly is he transporting to? Does he have a spaceship? Is he transporting to another time period? Wouldn't it be cool at least to have some kind of visual clue of where they are going, to show them on a spaceship or in some futuristic setting, and having him be in an actual costume which looks futuristic? But no, they're too lazy and cheap to do any of that, so they just filmed this whole scene out in the street, and it looks like the first take, and they just rolled with it, and they didn't bother to do any reshoots. The acting is so terrible, and it's also so funny how they keep transporting in front of other people in this whole season. They keep beaming in and out of the street with people in the background walking around, and no one notices it. Even back in NASA, when Picard and Nat Laris beamed in, we can actually see people in the background walking not that far from them. So wouldn't those people see the transporter effect and people beaming in and out, and no one ever notices it? Aren't there any cameras out there? Didn't they show previously in the season that Picard was caught by that cop because he saw some footage of Picard being transported into the street? So why are they not being more careful now, since they know there are cameras everywhere? But no one cares, no one notices. And then everyone are back in Picard's house, and Picard suddenly looks at the bullet holes in the walls, and he says, I remember those bullet holes from stories in my childhood. They were there when I was a kid. No one ever bothered to fix that wall, so that means we're in the correct timeline. All of this was supposed to happen. And they're planning how to live on Earth since they don't have a starship to go back to the future, so they're planning to stay on Earth and live there. And Seven asks what would they do about money. And Raffi is standing right there. Raffi will simply go and rob some white guy off the street, and then you will have money, so it's not really a problem. So why are you so worried about it? Also, don't you still have all of Nat Laris's technology in her apartment? Doesn't she have a replicator? So you can just replicate anything you need, so you don't need to worry about money that much, Seven. And you should be worried about how to hide your implant, since now you suddenly magically have the same implant you had previously. Even though, didn't they say in season 1 that the reason they couldn't remove all of Seven's hardware was because she was assimilated as a little kid, and that's why they couldn't remove all her hardware out, and yet now she was re-assimilated as an adult and somehow has the exact same implants they had before, and again they cannot remove it somehow. So she should be thinking about how to hide that implant on her eye. So anyway, Picard wanders around his house and he finds the key which he used to unlock the door of his mother, which caused the death of his mother, and he puts it in the same place where he found it as a kid. So he's now preordaining the death of his own mother. And then someone says bravo, and he walks into another room and sees Q sitting there, and Q is applauding him for preordaining the death of his own mother. He says, you're finally accepted your destiny or something. So his mother is supposed to die, and he accepts that because that's what leads him to become the man he was. So if not for his mother dying, then he wouldn't become a captain, I guess. Because you need to have a tragic backstory to make you stronger. That's the whole ideology of New Trek. That's something that we constantly see in all the new Star Trek shows, that every character has some kind of tragic background, but somehow it made them the woman that they are or something. So it's constantly the same thing. So now they're saying that because of Picard's tragedy, that's what led him to save galaxies and whatever. So he puts the key in the same place that it's supposed to be, instead of just destroying it. And I guess no one else ever found that brick which is moving. No one else ever found that key there for 400 years until he got there as a kid. So Q is applauding him for his decision. And basically Q says that he did all of this to lift Picard's guilt about the death of his mother, so that, he realizes that it was supposed to happen or something, that it's not his fault, or that is for the greater good or something. And so Picard will no longer feel guilty, and because of that he will allow himself to be loved, and then he will not die alone in the future or something. So all of this whole plot of the whole season was all in order to get Picard laid, basically, so that he will have a family finally in the future, because he will not feel guilty about the death of his mommy, which he caused, which now he recauses again. Now he's directly responsible, because he has the opportunity here to prevent it from happening, and yet he doesn't prevent it from happening, and somehow that makes him feel less guilty than he did before. Before he wasn't actually responsible. Before he just opened the door in an innocent way to free his mother, and then she killed herself, and yet that made him feel guilty. But him putting the key there with the knowledge of what's going to happen somehow makes him feel less guilty. So I hope it makes sense, because to me it all seems upside down, but whatever. So we have a scene between Q and Picard which actually feels kind of good acting wise, because Delancey is so good that he actually sells it. He actually feels like the Q character. And then it turns out he was a good guy all along, that he did all of it just to get Picard laid. So he's actually his best friend ever, and he even says, you're always my favorite or something. Even gods have favorites. And he's kind of touching his face, and it looks like he's about to kiss him or something. So he actually loves Picard. He did all of this to help Picard out. So all this hell he put everyone through, all the people who died and were injured, and all the mess that was caused, it was all actually out of kindness. That Q is actually the good guy in all of this story. Somehow, even though earlier in the season he was slapping Picard around, causing him to bleed, and saying to him it's all a penance or something, he seemed angry at him, he seemed crazy at him, and now he's suddenly behaving like a nice guy, and he's going to send them all back to the future. And then he tells all the others, and Raffi is really angry at Q because, Elnor died and all of that, and she asks Q, what about Elnor? And Q just says, who? And that part really cracked me up. That was probably the best moment in the whole show, because that felt like a classic Q moment, the Q humor. And then Q says that because he's dying, his final act of sending them back to the future will basically end him. That will be the end of Q. and they never actually explained in the whole show why exactly is he dying. And previously it was established they are able to kill each other or to commit suicide, so they are able to die, but they never explained in this show what exactly is causing his death. Like, is he committing suicide? Did some other Q did something to him? Are all the Q dying or just him? They never bother to explain anything. So somehow he's dying. For some reason, he's dissipating into nothingness or something. And so he says he's going to die alone, which also doesn't make sense because in Voyager we saw that he actually has a wife and a son. So why are they now saying he's dying alone? Did his son die? I guess that will make sense if his son died also, because then I can explain how come he never saved his best friend Icheb from being butchered alive back in season 1. And so maybe Q Jr. also died. Maybe that's what made Q Senior so depressed and crazy and wanting to commit suicide. I don't know. They never bother to explain any of this. I'm making up excuses for them, as always. I'm making up all the backstory in a way that will fit my headcanon, but even then it doesn't really work. And so that's the reason he wanted to save Picard one final time before he passes on to the next life or something. So suddenly he's a good guy, so Picard gives him a hug, and then Q is going to send them back, but then Rios says that he's staying in the past, which was so predictable, and Picard says, but what about the timeline? You're a Starfleet officer, we're supposed to uphold the Temporal Prime Directive. No, I'm just joking, he never said any of that. He just said, okay, you can stay in the past, no problems. So that woman will never remarry another man, she will never have kids with another man, and you can open a clinic with her and save a bunch of people which were not supposed to be saved. Maybe some of them will be bad guys, maybe some of them will cause some disaster in the future which will prevent the Federation, but I don't really care about any of that. I guess they could have said, that Q will guarantee that it will not cause any damage to the timeline, but anyway, Picard just lets him. And so Rios stays in the past with his wife and kid, which was so obvious right from the beginning that's what's going to happen. It feels like such a cheap soap opera that everything just falls into the right place so perfectly, so conveniently, and so this all feels so cheap and lazy, just fake forced drama which is supposed to be emotional, but it's annoying because of how stupid all of this is. And then Q snaps his fingers and all of them appear on the bridge of the Stargazer right before the explosion in the first episode, and for some reason Rios is not on the bridge even though he was there previously. And so from the perspective of the bridge crew of the Stargazer, their captain just disappeared for no reason, and Jurati was also on the bridge and she also disappeared for no reason from the perspective of the bridge crew. And so this wouldn't really make any sense in any other way of time travel, but because it's Q who did it, I guess it's okay, because he's basically a wizard, so a wizard did it, so that's okay, I guess. So from the perspective of the bridge crew, their captain and his former girlfriend just disappeared from the bridge for no reason, with no explanation, and all of them seem fine with that. None of them are worried about any of that. One of them does ask the question, where is Captain Rios? And Picard just distracts her and says, oh, don't worry about it, Helm, just follow my orders, I'm taking command of the bridge. And then he lets Seven command the bridge, because he tells Seven, I use my authority to make you the captain. I was not in that scene when you were complaining that you wanted to join Starfleet, but somehow I know you do, and so I'm making you the captain now. And it's so funny because, Admiral Janeway wasn't able to get Seven into Starfleet, and yet Admiral Picard, who was retired, is able to instantly make 7 of 9 the captain of the ship. And so he just tells her, I give you a field commission of captain, and then she sits in the captain's chair, and she's the one who's commanding everything, and Picard just sits on the side, even though he's the admiral in this situation. So anyway, he cancelled the self-destruct which he started early on, while the Borg Queen was attacking, because now he knows the Borg Queen is actually good, and then she unmasks, and we see that it is indeed Jurati, but she looks so horrible. I mean, the special effect, I don't think it's actual makeup, I think they digitally put her face on the stand double or put that thing on her head digitally. It looks like a bad Photoshop, as if someone just pasted her face on something else, so they didn't bother to actually do a physical mask or a costume, so she looks terrible. So this image looks so cheap and lazy and fake, it's just I can't believe what I'm looking at. And she just looks so ugly, she's barely recognizable. It's no wonder she put that mask on, I guess. And this whole situation could have been prevented if she just didn't attack the bridge crew. I mean, she beamed on board, she sent her Dr. Octopus tentacles to take over the whole bridge, causing them to self-destruct the ship. And she couldn't have known that Q will send them back and that Picard will cancel the self-destruct. From her perspective, I guess she remembers all of that from when she used to be on the bridge as the normal Jurati. So from her memory, she knows everything is going to explode and her mission will fail because of that. So why does she still do the same thing she did previously? I guess she knew that he will come back to the present and cancel the self-destruct, maybe because the Borg Queen now sees all the possible timelines and all of that, so maybe she had to do the same thing she did earlier to make sure everything that happened before will happen again, that she will become the Borg Queen again, and they will be back in this place again to finish the time loop. But it's also convenient, it's also convoluted, and doesn't really make any sense if you think about it, because from the perspective of this Borg Queen, all she knows is that she will cause them to potentially blow up the ship and kill her and destroy the mission to save the galaxy. So if she's going to save the galaxy, why didn't she just come a little bit earlier and reveal her face and explain to Picard the situation? I guess Picard wouldn't believe her before he experienced the time loop. But anyway, I guess the only way to explain that is because she also sees all possible timelines and she knows everything will be okay, and she has to play the part of attacking the bridge crew because she has to fulfill what happened before, to fulfill the time loop. So that's why she did it. I don't know. So anyway, after Picard realizes that it's her and she unmasks, and then they become best friends again, and then she says she needs Starfleet's help to save the galaxy because some anomaly is going to appear any second and is going to send a beam into the center of the quadrant, which is going to destroy everything in half the galaxy or something, and that's why she needs all the Starfleet ships. And then they all align with the Borg ship and they all join their shields together to stop this anomaly from killing all life in the galaxy or something. And all of this scene was so rushed, it was so jumbled, it was so messy that it really annoyed me. Like, this idea could have been good if they actually developed it, if they actually gave us a little bit time to take it in, then it could be okay. But they rushed through all of this so quickly in such a convoluted, jumbled way that nothing made any sense. So suddenly all the other Starfleet ships are cooperating with the Borg, who from their perspective are their enemy. But because Picard gave command to 7 of 9, and 7 of 9 tells the other Starfleet ships not to resist with the Borg, and then the Borg take over all the Starfleet ships, and they put up a giant shield together to stop the beam which is being fired from that portal which just opened up. It's such a small beam that they're able to stop it with a few starships, and yet it was supposed to engulf all of the quadrant or something. And the most annoying part is that they showed it from the perspective of all those planets which they were saving. And all those planets saw that light in the sky of that anomaly. And that really pissed me off. That reminds me of that scene in Star Wars The Force Awakens when Starkiller Base was sending that laser to destroy the Republic, and people on distant planets could all see it in the sky in lifetime, that beam moving through the sky, I guess much faster than light, and all of them could see it from the side, and they saw the planets blowing up in the sky and all of that. That is so annoying. That is such a lazy, unscientific way. You know, what about the speed of light? You know, planets being light years away will only see all of this happening years from now. They will not see it in lifetime as they show it, and so that part really annoyed me. And they could have solved it easily. They could have simply showed that the anomaly opens up right next to one planet. Then it will be plausible that that beam could destroy just one planet. You know, one planet can still have billions of people on it. I would be okay with that. But no, they have to exaggerate everything. They say that beam will wipe out all the Alpha Quadrant. It's aimed at the center of the Alpha Quadrant. What does that even mean? What center? Which planet is it aimed at? It's not clear. Nothing makes any sense. So that beam is so tiny that a few starships can stop it with their shields, and yet it threatens the entire quadrant. And they save the entire quadrant. And Picard says, we saved billions of people. And I'm saying, if it's the whole quadrant, shouldn't it be trillions? Like, you could have simply said, it threatens one solar system or one planet. Then I will be okay with that. And then you can even show it close by, that it simply opens up next to a specific planet, and then people on that planet can see it a few minutes from now. You know, even then I would say it's not supposed to instantly be visible in the sky or whatever, but you know, they can imply some time passed in between. Again, another reason for why not make it too rushed, because the way they edited it, it's as if the whole galaxy looked up and saw that anomaly in the sky, and they have to save it in the last moment, and so all the ships align together with the Borg ship, and they save the galaxy from that beam which came out of nowhere. And once again, there is no explanation. It's another mystery box, just like all the other mystery boxes which never had an explanation, like why is Q dying. None of that was explained, and now this anomaly comes out of nowhere and threatens the galaxy, and they never reveal what it is or where it came from. Wouldn't it be simple to simply say, it's being sent by the same beings who appeared in the end of the previous season, those robots from the other galaxy who try to send their giant tentacles to take over our galaxy. Maybe they got pissed off that that portal was destroyed, and so they're now opening their own portal, and they're sending some radiation that will wipe out all organic life in the galaxy. That could have been a more clever line, that they're not physically going to destroy the whole galaxy, but rather simply wipe out all organic life with some radiation or something. Then it will be slightly more plausible, but no, they forgot all about that, I guess, so they never bother to even explain what that is. They say it's a transwarp tunnel, which someone created, and they don't explain who, and I guess it will be left for the next season, and the Borg Queen wanted to save them from it, and so she needed a friend. That's why all of this time loop had to happen. I guess Q knew all of this is going to happen, so he arranged all of this plot to somehow save the galaxy. And it's funny, in the previous scene when Picard asked him if Picard will be needed to save the galaxy, and Q says, why is it always has to be a galactic saving event? But then it does end up to be a galactic saving event in the end. So all of this was absolutely ridiculous. And then in the very end they have a party in Guinan's bar, and Guinan apparently remembers everything that happened in this season. So she's the same Guinan that we saw in the past, and she says all of this was always supposed to happen. So what exactly happened with Time's Arrow, if it didn't happen from her perspective in 2024, and she says she remembers everything that happened in 2024, so that means she still doesn't remember what happened in Time's Arrow. So all of this universe is a totally separate timeline from the one in TNG, which would make sense. I wish they would have simply acknowledged that. That will explain why Picard's house looks totally different from the one he had in TNG. I just made a comparison video of that on my other channel. It's not the same house, and in season 1 I myself was making up excuses saying maybe it's a different house, or maybe his house burned down and that's why it's a different house. But in this season they constantly insist to show that was the only house he ever had in France, that was the same house he grew up in as a kid, and yet in TNG's episode Family he says the house he looks at in that episode is the one he grew up in as a kid, and so that doesn't fit, and so obviously it's a different house, it's a different vineyard. So all of this must be in a totally separate timeline. So Time's Arrow never happened in the universe of this new show, and Guinan didn't remember it, yet she does remember what happened in 2024, and she says all of this time loop was always supposed to happen, and she even has a photo of Rios in the bar, and she says she always kept it there, wondering if Picard will see it. And so how irresponsible is that she knew that Picard might potentially see that photo of Rios in the past, and so she just kept it there and just giggled at that, I guess. So how irresponsible is that she risked the whole time loop and the whole timeline by keeping that photo there for Picard to see, and yet he simply didn't notice it. And I guess the only good thing about this whole idea that this was all a predestinational time loop, that it was always supposed to happen, it means that Rios did not actually violate the timeline, because all the people he supposedly saved in the past were always supposed to be saved, because Guinan says that Rios and his wife saved a whole bunch of people all around the planet by opening clinics everywhere and all of that. And then she says that he died in a bar fight in Morocco or something with a cigar in his mouth. So I guess he finally lit that cigar, because for the whole season he was holding the cigar in his hand all the time and never actually smoked it. So I guess right before his death he finally smoked it. So of course he died in a bar fight, of course they killed off yet another man in the show, but his wife lived till old age and died of oldness. So of course it's the man who died and the wife who lived, and their son was the one who saved the planet's pollution problem, because Renee brought an organism from Europa, which Rios's adoptive son used to save the oceans of Earth, which again is a continuity problem even in the new Trek shows, because in Star Trek Discovery, Stamets said that Earth was choking to death on pollution until they all woke up. And yet now it's revealed they never woke up, it's simply some microorganism from another planet which somehow cleaned all the pollution. And I guess in the Confederacy timeline no one ever bothered to explore Europa in their own solar system while they conquered the whole galaxy, but they never found a microbe that can save the pollution in that timeline. So anyway, nothing makes any sense. Then Picard goes back to his house to meet the real Laris, and apparently he never tells her about this whole time travel experience he just had of meeting her ancestor. He never asks her, by the way, did you have an ancestor who disappeared after giving birth to your great-great-grandmother or something, because I think I just met her in the past. He never actually tells her any of that, and instead he wants to give her a second chance or something, and they never actually show them kissing. They just kind of stand together, implying that they will be together now or something, and then it zooms out of his house, which looks nothing like the house we saw in TNG. And then it zooms out into space, and that's the end. And the sad thing is that it could have been good. Like, if I saw the rough outline, the rough storyline of the season on a piece of paper, I might have said it could be good, but the details, the execution, the cheapness of all of it, the lack of attention to all the details, the way it was done in a way that doesn't make any sense, that's what really ruins all of it. It turns it into a comedy. It's comedic, and not in a fun way, because it was so stupid, it wasn't even funny, it was sad. And so many moments were kind of over the top and so convenient and all of that. It was like a bad soap opera, and over the top, especially the villain Dr. Soong was so one-dimensional. He was so boring as a character. Like, he's just pure sadistic, pure simplistic. It felt so cartoony. It's like watching a cartoon villain. So it's so ridiculous. Like, even his acting was bad. You know, Brent Spiner, I used to think he's a good actor at least. But even his acting was so silly as this new Dr. Soong, which is ridiculous. And they never explained why all the Soongs look the same. I at least expected them to imply that he's going to clone himself or something, but they never even do that. And the way that Corey's story ended with Wesley Crusher showing up out of nowhere with no foreshadowing and taking her away somewhere, never to be revealed where. And so it's like so convenient, lazy way to finish all these plot lines without any thought put into them. And, you know, Q dying for no reason just because they know it's going to be the last appearance of the Lancy, I guess, and so they just wanted to explain why he will not be in future shows, I guess, and so he just dies for no reason somehow. And so all of these convenient, simplistic endings of all these plot lines and all these empty mystery boxes which are never answered because the writers don't know the answer, and so all of that makes it feel so cheap and lazy and unintelligent. And all the characters seem to be unintelligent. They're not thinking about basic stuff that I'm thinking of, even though they have all this amazing technology, but they don't use it when it's not convenient for the plot to use it, and so they just forget about it. And so things like that really annoyed me. The lack of attention to detail, the lack of thought into anything. Nothing makes any sense in the end, and so that's why it really fails, in my opinion. So that's my thoughts about this episode and this whole season. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss it all in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.